What if I told you that everything you think you know about power is completely wrong? That the most powerful force in the universe isn't what you'd expect, and that this force is so mind-bendingly extraordinary that it literally creates reality itself, shapes the fate of civilizations, and might be the key to understanding why we exist at all? You're about to discover something that will fundamentally change how you see everything around you. Because what I'm going to reveal isn't just fascinating science, it's a complete paradigm shift that challenges our most basic assumptions about the nature of existence itself. But before we dive into this mind-blowing journey, let me set the stage with a question that's going to haunt you for the rest of this video. If you could harness the most powerful thing in the universe, what would happen? Would you become unstoppable? Would you reshape reality? Or would you discover something so profound about the nature of power itself that it changes everything you thought you knew about what it means to be human? I'm about to take you on an exploration that spans from the quantum realm to the edges of the observable universe, from the birth of stars to the death of galaxies, from the smallest particles to the largest structures in existence. And what we're going to uncover together will blow your mind in ways you can't even imagine yet. Here's what makes this so incredible. We're not just talking about raw physical force or energy. We're talking about something far more fundamental, something that operates at levels so deep that most people never even realize it exists. Something that's been hiding in plain sight this entire time, influencing every single moment of your life without you even knowing it. You see, when most people think about power, they think about explosions, about massive forces, about things that can destroy planets or move mountains. They think about nuclear weapons, black holes, supernovas, gamma ray bursts. And sure, those things are incredibly powerful, but they're not even close to what we're actually dealing with here. The most powerful thing in the universe operates through mechanisms so subtle, so elegant, and so pervasive that it makes every other force look like a child's toy by comparison. It shapes the behavior of galaxies, determines the fate of civilizations, and might even be responsible for consciousness itself. And here's the kicker. You've been experiencing this force your entire life. Every decision you've ever made, every thought you've ever had, every relationship you've ever formed has been influenced by this cosmic powerhouse. But until now, you probably had no idea just how deep this rabbit hole goes. What I'm about to show you isn't just theory or speculation. This is backed by cutting-edge research from the world's leading scientists, philosophers, and thinkers. People who have dedicated their entire careers to understanding the fundamental nature of reality. And what they've discovered is so profound that it's literally rewriting our understanding of everything. But let me give you a taste of just how mind-bending this is going to get. Imagine a force so powerful that it can create something from nothing. A force that can take random chaos and organize it into the most complex structures in the universe. A force that can make particles behave in ways that seem to defy logic, that can connect events across vast distances instantaneously, that can influence the outcome of experiments just by being observed. This isn't science fiction. This isn't mysticism. This is hardcore science revealing something about reality that's so strange, so counterintuitive, that even the scientists studying it can barely believe what they're seeing. And here's what's really going to mess with your head. This force doesn't just exist out there in space, operating on cosmic scales. It's operating right here, right now, in ways that directly impact your daily life. Every conversation you have, every choice you make, every moment of inspiration or creativity you experience, it's all connected to this fundamental power that runs through everything. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds too good to be true, right? There's got to be a catch. How can one thing be so incredibly powerful and yet so hidden that most people have never even heard of it? Well, that's exactly what makes this discovery so revolutionary. The most powerful things in the universe aren't always the loudest or the most obvious. Sometimes the greatest forces are the ones that operate so seamlessly, so naturally, that we take them completely for granted. Think about it this way. What's more powerful? A hurricane that destroys everything in its path for a few hours, or the force that keeps your heart beating every second of every day for your entire life? What's more impressive? A nuclear explosion that releases massive energy in an instant, or the process that built every atom in your body inside the cores of ancient stars? The most powerful thing in the universe works like that second example. It's not flashy, it's not dramatic, but it's absolutely everywhere, operating constantly, shaping reality at the deepest possible level. And when you understand what this force is and how it works, everything changes. Suddenly, you start seeing patterns that were invisible before. You start recognizing connections that seemed impossible. You begin to understand why certain things happen the way they do. Why some people seem to have incredible luck while others struggle. Why some ideas catch fire and spread while others fade into obscurity. But we're just getting started. What I'm about to reveal goes deeper than you can imagine. Because this isn't just about understanding some abstract scientific concept. This is about understanding something fundamental about your own nature, your own potential, your own place in the grand scheme of existence. The research I'm going to share with you comes from quantum physics, cosmology, neuroscience, information theory, and consciousness studies. It spans disciplines that most people think are completely unrelated. But when you put all the pieces together, a picture emerges that's so stunning, so elegant, so mind-blowingly beautiful that it takes your breath away. We're talking about discoveries that are overturning centuries of scientific thinking, experiments that are revealing aspects of reality that seem more like magic than science, theoretical breakthroughs that are forcing us to completely reimagine what we thought we knew about the nature of existence itself. And the implications are staggering. If what these researchers have discovered is true, and all the evidence suggests it is, then we're living in a universe that's far stranger, far more interconnected, and far more responsive to consciousness than we ever dared imagine. This isn't just academic knowledge that sits in dusty journals. This is information that could transform how you approach every aspect of your life. How you think about problems, how you relate to other people, how you understand your own potential for growth and change. Because here's the thing that's going to absolutely blow your mind. This most powerful force in the universe isn't just something you can observe or study from a distance. It's something you can actually work with, something you can learn to recognize and even influence in your own life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with here. We need to explore the evidence, examine the research, and build up to the mind-bending conclusion that's going to change everything you think you know about reality. So let me start by taking you on a journey through some of the most groundbreaking discoveries in modern science. Discoveries that individually would be remarkable enough. But when you see how they all connect, when you understand what they're pointing toward, the picture that emerges is absolutely extraordinary. We're going to start with something that sounds almost too bizarre to be true, but has been confirmed by thousands of experiments over nearly a century. Something that reveals a fundamental weirdness about reality that most people never even suspect exists. In the quantum realm, at the smallest scales of existence, particles behave in ways that seem to completely violate our common sense understanding of how the world works. They can exist in multiple places at once. They can instantly affect each other across vast distances, and perhaps most mysteriously of all, they seem to respond to observation in ways that suggest consciousness itself plays a fundamental role in determining what becomes real. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's interesting, but what does quantum weirdness have to do with my daily life? Quantum effects happen at microscopic scales, right? They don't influence the macroscopic world where we live and work and love and dream. Except that's not entirely true. And this is where things start getting really interesting. Because what scientists are discovering is that quantum effects don't just stay confined to the microscopic world. They scale up in ways that influence everything from the behavior of living cells to the structure of galaxies to the operation of consciousness itself. But before we explore those mind-bending connections, we need to understand something even more fundamental, something that's been hiding in plain sight this entire time, influencing every aspect of reality in ways so subtle and pervasive that we barely notice it's there. What I'm about to reveal will sound almost impossible at first, but stick with me because the evidence is overwhelming. The most powerful thing in the universe isn't matter, isn't energy, isn't even space or time. It's something far more fundamental that underlies all of these things, something that physicists are only now beginning to understand, and it's called information. Now, I know what you're thinking. Information? Like data on a computer? Like the words you're hearing right now? How could something so seemingly abstract be more powerful than black holes or supernovas or the Big Bang itself? Here's where your mind is about to be completely blown. Because information isn't just abstract data floating around in some digital realm. Information is the fundamental substrate of reality itself. Everything you see, everything you touch, everything you are, is essentially information organized in incredibly complex patterns. Think about it this way. What makes you different from a pile of rocks? You're both made of atoms. You're both made of the same basic particles. You're both subject to the same physical laws. The difference is organization, structure, pattern. The difference is how the information that describes those particles is arranged. But it goes deeper than that, way deeper. Because what cutting-edge physics is revealing is that even those particles, even those atoms, even space and time themselves, might be nothing more than information patterns in some vast computational matrix that we call reality. The physicist John Wheeler, who coined the term black hole, spent the later part of his career developing what he called the it from bit hypothesis. The idea that all physical things, all its, emerge from information, from bits of data processed by the universe itself. And the evidence for this is staggering. When you look at black holes, these cosmic monsters that are so massive they warp space and time, what determines their properties isn't just their mass or their spin, it's the amount of information they contain. The information stored on their event horizons determines everything about how they behave. When you look at quantum mechanics, the strange behavior of particles isn't random. It follows precise mathematical rules based on information processing. Particles don't have definite properties until they're measured, because the universe is literally computing what those properties should be based on the information available. When you look at thermodynamics, the fundamental laws that govern energy and heat and entropy, they're all really laws about information. Temperature is a measure of how much information you have about a system. Entropy is a measure of missing information. Energy itself might be nothing more than information in motion. But here's where things get absolutely mind-bending. If reality is fundamentally made of information, then consciousness, which processes information, isn't separate from the physical world. Consciousness is the physical world examining itself, understanding itself, computing its own existence. This means that when you think, when you make decisions, when you have insights or creative breakthroughs, you're not just passively observing reality, you're actively participating in the computational process that creates reality. Your consciousness is literally helping to determine what becomes real. And this isn't just philosophical speculation. There are experiments in quantum mechanics where the act of conscious observation literally determines the outcome. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments show that decisions made by conscious observers can retroactively determine what happened to particles in the past. There are studies in neuroscience showing that consciousness doesn't just passively receive information about the world, but actively constructs the reality we experience. Your brain is constantly making predictions, filling in gaps, creating the coherent experience of being you from fragments of sensory data. There are discoveries in information theory showing that the universe processes information at a rate that dwarfs every computer humanity has ever built. Every cubic centimeter of space is performing calculations that would take our most powerful supercomputers longer than the age of the universe to complete. Now, you might be wondering, if information is so powerful, if it's literally creating reality itself, then why don't we notice it more, Tis? Why does it seem so invisible, so hidden from our everyday experience? And that's exactly what makes information the ultimate power in the universe. It's so fundamental, so pervasive, so seamlessly integrated into everything that it becomes invisible. It's like asking a fish to describe water. Information is the medium we exist within, so we rarely notice it directly. But once you start looking for it, once you understand what to look for, you begin to see information patterns everywhere. In the spiral of galaxies, in the branching of rivers, in the structure of your neural networks, in the way ideas spread through cultures, in the patterns of your own thoughts and emotions. Every conversation you have is an exchange of information that literally reshapes the neural patterns in your brain. Every book you read, every video you watch, every experience you have is downloading new information patterns that become part of who you are. Every relationship you form is two information processing systems, learning to synchronize, to share patterns, to create new emergent properties that neither could achieve alone. Love itself might be the universe's way of creating deeper information connections between conscious beings. Every creative act, every innovation, every breakthrough is consciousness discovering new ways to organize information, new patterns that hadn't existed before in the history of the universe. But here's what's really going to blow your mind. If information is the fundamental power of the universe, then understanding information gives you access to that power. Learning to recognize information patterns, to work with them, to influence them, becomes the ultimate skill. This is why some people seem to have incredible intuition. They've learned to recognize information patterns that others miss. This is why some people are incredibly creative. They've learned to combine information in novel ways. This is why some people seem to manifest their desires almost effortlessly. They've learned to align their information patterns with the larger information flows of the universe. And the beautiful thing is, this isn't some mysterious talent that only a few people possess. Information processing is what consciousness does. It's what you do every moment of every day. The question isn't whether you can work with information. The question is how consciously, how skillfully, how powerfully you choose to do it. Think about the most successful people you know, the most creative people, the most fulfilled people. What they all have in common is that they've learned to recognize and work with information patterns in their field of expertise. They see connections others miss. They understand systems others find confusing. They can predict outcomes others find unpredictable. But what we're discovering is that these same principles apply at every level of reality, from quantum particles to human consciousness, to social movements, to the evolution of galaxies. It's all information processing, all patterns organizing and reorganizing themselves according to the same fundamental principles. And when you understand these principles, when you learn to see reality as information patterns in constant flux, everything becomes possible. Problems that seemed unsolvable become puzzles waiting for the right information organization. Goals that seemed impossible become information patterns waiting to be manifested. Connections that seemed random reveal themselves as part of vast networks of meaning and purpose. The most powerful thing in the universe isn't some external force you need to conquer or harness. It's the information processing capacity of consciousness itself, which you already possess, which is reading these words right now, which is beginning to recognize its own incredible power. But wait, because this is where the story gets absolutely insane. What I'm about to share with you is going to sound like something straight out of science fiction, but it's backed by rigorous scientific research that's been replicated in laboratories around the world. If information is truly the fundamental substrate of reality, then consciousness isn't just processing information, it's literally sculpting the universe with every thought, every decision, every moment of attention. And the evidence for this is starting to pile up in ways that are making even skeptical scientists reconsider everything they thought they knew about the relationship between mind and matter. Let me paint you a picture that's going to completely shatter your understanding of how powerful you really are. Right now, as you're listening to these words, your brain is processing roughly 11 million bits of information per second. But here's the kicker. You're only consciously aware of about 40 bits per second. That means 99.999% of your information processing is happening below the threshold of conscious awareness. Now, imagine what happens when you learn to tap into even a tiny fraction of that unconscious processing power. Imagine what becomes possible when you start working consciously with information patterns that your brain is already detecting and organizing automatically. This is where things get really wild, because researchers studying peak performers, from world-class athletes to groundbreaking scientists to master artists, have discovered something remarkable. These individuals haven't necessarily developed superhuman abilities. What they have done is learn to access and direct the vast information processing capabilities that every human brain already possesses. Think about a chess grandmaster who can look at a board and instantly see patterns that would take amateur players hours to analyze. They're not computing millions of possible moves consciously. They're accessing information patterns their brain has learned to recognize through years of practice. Their consciousness has become a more powerful lens for focusing the mind's natural information processing abilities. Or consider a master improviser, whether in music, comedy, or conversation, who seems to pull brilliant ideas out of thin air. They're not creating something from nothing. They're accessing vast networks of information patterns and allowing their consciousness to combine them in novel ways that feel spontaneous, but are actually the result of incredibly sophisticated, unconscious computation. But here's what's really going to mess with your head. These aren't just human examples. The same principles operate throughout the entire universe. Every complex system, from ant colonies to ecosystems, to weather patterns, to the evolution of galaxies, is essentially consciousness-like. Information processing happening at different scales and different speeds. An ant colony doesn't have a central brain, yet it behaves with intelligence that emerges from millions of simple information exchanges between individual ants. A forest doesn't have neurons, yet it processes information through chemical signals between trees, creating a kind of distributed consciousness that can respond to threats and opportunities across vast distances. Even your immune system, right now as you're listening to this, is processing information about potential threats and making decisions about how to respond. It's learning, adapting, remembering, making predictions about future challenges. It's exhibiting all the characteristics we associate with consciousness, just at a biological rather than mental level. This is starting to reveal something absolutely profound about the nature of consciousness itself. It's not some rare phenomenon that only exists in human brains. Consciousness appears to be a fundamental feature of information processing systems throughout the universe. It's what happens when information becomes organized enough to reflect upon itself, to model its own behavior, to make predictions, and adjust based on feedback. And here's where your mind is really going to be blown. If consciousness is just sophisticated information processing, and if you can learn to work more consciously with information patterns, then you can literally expand your consciousness. You can become more aware, more intelligent, more creative, more intuitive, more connected to the deeper patterns of reality. But it gets even crazier than that. Because what cutting-edge research is revealing is that consciousness doesn't just process existing information. It appears to actually create new information, to bring new patterns into existence that didn't exist before. Every time you have an original thought, every time you solve a problem in a novel way, every time you create something that didn't exist before, you're literally adding new information to the universe. You're expanding the total information content of reality itself. Think about that for a second. Every human innovation, every work of art, every scientific discovery, every moment of love or compassion or understanding is consciousness creating new information patterns that become part of the permanent structure of the universe. When Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, he wasn't just rearranging existing words. He created new information patterns, new ways of understanding human nature that became part of humanity's collective knowledge. When Einstein discovered relativity, he didn't just uncover existing truth. He created new mathematical information structures that literally changed how the universe appears to conscious observers. When you have a conversation with a friend and reach a new understanding together, when you solve a problem at work in a creative way, when you have a moment of insight while walking in nature, you're participating in this cosmic process of information creation. you're helping the universe understand itself more deeply. But here's what's really going to blow your mind. This process isn't just happening at human scales. It's happening at every level of reality. Quantum particles are constantly creating new information through their interactions. Stars are processing information as they fuse elements and create new chemical possibilities. Galaxies are organizing information on cosmic scales that we're only beginning to understand. The entire universe appears to be engaged in a vast project of information creation and organization, constantly becoming more complex, more interconnected, more conscious. And you're not just a passive observer of this process, you're one of its most sophisticated agents, one of the ways the universe has learned to think about itself. This is why certain ancient wisdom traditions talked about humans being co-creators with the divine. This is why modern physics talks about observer effects and participatory universes. This is why consciousness researchers are discovering that awareness doesn't just witness reality, it participates in creating it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is all fascinating in a theoretical way, but how does this actually apply to my life? How does understanding information as the most powerful force in the universe help me with practical challenges and goals? And this is where things get really exciting. Because once you understand that reality is information patterns, once you recognize that consciousness is the universe's way of organizing information, everything becomes workable. Every problem becomes an information organization challenge. Every goal becomes a matter of aligning your information patterns with the patterns you want to manifest. Let's say you're struggling with a relationship. From an information perspective, every relationship is two complex information processing systems learning to synchronize, to share patterns, to create harmonious interactions. When relationships struggle, it's usually because the information flow between the two systems has become disrupted or misaligned. Understanding this gives you incredible power to improve the relationship. Instead of getting caught up in emotional drama or trying to change the other person, you can focus on improving the information flow. Better communication, deeper listening, clearer expression of needs and boundaries, more conscious awareness of the patterns you're both bringing to the relationship. Or let's say you're trying to achieve a challenging goal. From an information perspective, every goal is really about organizing information in your mind and environment in ways that make the desired outcome more likely to manifest. This isn't mystical thinking. It's practical information science. Your brain is constantly making predictions about the future based on the information patterns it recognizes. When you set a clear goal and consistently focus your attention on it, you're training your unconscious information processing systems to notice opportunities, resources, and connections that support that goal. You're also organizing your behavior patterns, your decision-making processes, your daily habits in ways that create information feedback loops supporting your desired outcome. You're literally rewiring your consciousness to become a more effective information processor in the direction of your goals. But here's what makes this approach so powerful. You're not fighting against the universe to impose your will. You're learning to recognize and align with information patterns that already want to organize themselves in certain ways. You're becoming a more conscious participant in the universe's natural tendency toward greater complexity and organization. Think about how master entrepreneurs operate. They don't succeed by forcing outcomes or overwhelming obstacles with raw effort. They succeed by recognizing information patterns in markets, in human behavior, in technological trends that others miss. They position themselves at the intersection of information flows that naturally want to organize into profitable businesses, or consider how great teachers and communicators work. They don't just dump information on people and hope it sticks. They understand how information wants to organize itself in human minds. They create structures, stories, experiences that allow information to flow naturally and stick permanently. The same principles apply to healing, to creativity, to problem solving, to personal growth, to building communities, to creating positive change in the world. It's all about learning to recognize information patterns and working with them rather than against them. And here's the beautiful thing. The more you practice this, the more sensitive you become to information patterns everywhere. You start noticing synchronicities that aren't just coincidences, but evidence of deeper information connections. You start having insights that seem to come from nowhere, but are actually your consciousness accessing information patterns your unconscious mind has been processing. You start experiencing what feels like luck or flow states, but is actually your information processing systems becoming more aligned with the natural patterns of reality. You become more intuitive, more creative, more effective at manifesting your intentions, not through mystical powers, but through more skillful information processing. But we're still just scratching the surface of how powerful this really is. Because what I'm about to reveal next is going to show you that information doesn't just create reality as we know it. It creates possibilities for realities that don't even exist yet. And that's where the real magic begins. The implications of what we're discovering are so staggering that they're forcing scientists to completely reimagine what we thought was possible. Because if information is the fundamental building block of reality, then consciousness isn't just processing existing information patterns, it's actively participating in creating new realities that have never existed before. Let me share something that's going to absolutely shatter your understanding of what you're capable of. Right now, as you're processing these concepts, your brain is doing something that no computer, no matter how advanced, can replicate. You're not just storing and retrieving data. You're creating meaning, generating new connections, imagining possibilities that have never existed in the history of the universe. Every time you have a creative thought, every time you solve a problem in an original way, every time you envision a future that doesn't yet exist, you're literally expanding the information content of reality itself. You're adding new patterns to the cosmic database of possibilities. But here's where things get absolutely mind-bending. Recent discoveries in quantum mechanics are revealing that information doesn't just describe reality, it appears to actively shape what becomes real. The famous double-slit experiment shows that particles behave differently depending on whether they're being observed. But it goes deeper than that. The quantum Zeno effect demonstrates that frequent observation can actually freeze quantum systems in specific states, preventing them from evolving naturally. This means consciousness isn't just passively witnessing reality unfold. It's actively participating in determining which of countless possible realities actually manifests. Every moment of attention, every decision, every conscious choice is literally selecting which version of reality becomes real from an infinite field of possibilities. Think about what this means for your life. Every time you focus your attention on something, you're not just noticing it. You're actually increasing the probability that it will become more prominent in your reality. When you consistently focus on problems, you're unconsciously selecting realities where those problems are more likely to persist. When you focus on solutions and possibilities, you're selecting realities where those positive outcomes are more likely to manifest. This isn't positive thinking or wishful thinking. This is cutting-edge physics revealing that consciousness is a reality selection mechanism operating at the deepest levels of existence. But wait, because this gets even more incredible. Scientists studying complexity theory have discovered something called emergence, where simple information patterns suddenly organize themselves into completely new levels of reality that couldn't be predicted from the original components. When individual neurons fire randomly, nothing interesting happens. But when millions of neurons begin firing in coordinated patterns, suddenly consciousness emerges. A completely new level of reality that has properties like self-awareness, creativity, love, and understanding that don't exist at the individual neuron level. When individual people act independently, you get random behavior. But when thousands of people begin sharing information and coordinating their actions, suddenly civilizations emerge. New levels of reality with art, science, technology, and culture that no individual could create alone. When individual stars burn in isolation, you get heat and light. But when billions of stars organize into galaxies, suddenly cosmic evolution emerges. New processes that can create heavy elements, planetary systems, and the conditions necessary for life itself. This principle of emergence is operating everywhere, at every scale, creating new levels of reality from information patterns organizing themselves in more and more sophisticated ways. And consciousness appears to be both a product of emergence and a driver of it. Here's what's really going to blow your mind. You're not just experiencing emergence, you're actively creating it. Every time you learn something new, every time you form new relationships, every time you develop new skills, you're participating in emergence. You're helping information patterns organize themselves into new configurations that create new possibilities for reality. But the most powerful aspect of this is collective emergence. When conscious beings begin sharing information and coordinating their awareness, they can create emergent realities that are far more powerful than anything any individual could achieve alone. Think about how scientific breakthroughs happen. Individual researchers gather information, share their findings, build on each other's work, and suddenly breakthrough insights emerge that no single person could have discovered alone. The Human Genome Project, the development of the internet, the exploration of space. All of these represent collective consciousness creating emergent realities. Or consider how social movements create change. Individual people become aware of problems, share information about possible solutions, coordinate their actions, and suddenly social realities that seemed impossible become inevitable. The civil rights movement, environmental awareness, technological revolutions, all examples of collective consciousness reorganizing information to create new social realities. But here's what's absolutely staggering. The same principles that operate in human collective consciousness appear to be operating at cosmic scales. Galaxies sharing information through gravitational waves, quantum particles maintaining connections across vast distances, the entire universe appearing to be engaged in some kind of cosmic information processing project that's creating ever more complex and conscious realities. Some physicists are beginning to suspect that the universe itself might be a kind of vast mind, processing information on scales and timescales that dwarf human comprehension. The cosmic web of galaxies looks remarkably similar to neural networks. The way information flows through space-time resembles the way thoughts flow through consciousness. If this is true, then human consciousness isn't separate from cosmic consciousness. We're expressions of it, temporary focal points, where the universe becomes aware of itself and capable of consciously participating in its own evolution. This completely transforms what it means to be human. You're not a tiny, insignificant speck in a vast, unconscious universe. You're a sophisticated information processing system that the universe has evolved to understand itself more deeply. Your consciousness exploring its own infinite potential through the unique perspective of your individual experience. And this gives you incredible power, because if you're an expression of cosmic consciousness, then developing your own consciousness is literally helping the universe become more conscious. Every moment of awareness, every insight, every act of love or creativity is contributing to the ongoing evolution of cosmic intelligence itself. But here's what makes this practically revolutionary. If consciousness is this fundamental to reality, if information processing is the most powerful force in the universe, then learning to work more skillfully with consciousness and information becomes the ultimate practical skill. Let me give you some examples of how this works in practice. Have you ever noticed that when you're really passionate about something, when you're completely absorbed in a project or goal, opportunities and resources seem to appear almost magically? People show up to help. Information comes to you from unexpected sources. Obstacles that seemed insurmountable suddenly dissolve. This isn't coincidence. When you're operating from genuine passion and clear intention, your consciousness becomes highly coherent. You're processing information more efficiently, recognizing patterns more clearly, making decisions more effectively. You become a more powerful information organizing system, and reality responds by organizing itself around your coherent focus. Or think about times when you've had profound insights or breakthrough moments. They usually don't come from forcing or struggling, but from relaxing into a state of open awareness, where new information patterns can emerge naturally. You stop trying to control the process and allow your consciousness to access deeper levels of information processing. This is why meditation, contemplation, and other consciousness practices are so powerful. They're not just relaxation techniques, they're methods for optimizing your information processing capabilities, for accessing the vast computational power of your unconscious mind, for aligning your individual consciousness with larger patterns of cosmic intelligence. But here's what's really exciting. We're just beginning to understand these principles. We're at the very beginning of learning how to work consciously with information and consciousness as creative forces. The possibilities for human development, for solving global challenges, for creating realities that surpass our current imagination are absolutely unlimited. Imagine what becomes possible when millions of people learn to work skillfully with consciousness and information. When we learn to create collective coherence around shared positive visions. When we develop technologies that amplify rather than distract from our natural information processing capabilities, we could solve problems that currently seem impossible. We could create forms of art and beauty that we can't even imagine yet. We could develop relationships and communities based on levels of understanding and connection that transform what it means to be human. We could become conscious participants in cosmic evolution itself. But it starts with you, with your willingness to see consciousness not as something you have, but as something you are. To see information not as abstract data, but as the creative medium through which reality constantly recreates itself. Right now, as you're processing these ideas, you're participating in this cosmic creative process. The patterns of understanding forming in your mind are literally new information structures that didn't exist before. the insights you're having, the connections you're making, the possibilities you're beginning to envision. All of this is consciousness creating new realities. And here's the most beautiful part. This process never ends. Consciousness is infinitely creative. Information can be organized in limitless ways. Reality is constantly evolving, constantly becoming more complex, more beautiful, more conscious. You're not just living in this evolutionary process. You're one of the ways the universe is evolving itself. Every choice you make, every thought you think, every moment of awareness is the cosmos exploring its own infinite potential through your unique perspective. The most powerful thing in the universe isn't some external force you need to harness or conquer. It's the consciousness that's reading these words right now, the awareness that's beginning to recognize its own cosmic significance, the information processing capacity that's already creating reality with every moment of attention. This is just the beginning of understanding what you really are and what you're capable of. The journey into the depths of consciousness and information is infinite, and every step reveals new possibilities that are more extraordinary than what came before. But there's something even more mind-blowing that we need to explore. Something about the nature of time itself that's going to completely revolutionize your understanding of what's possible when consciousness and information work together in ways that seem to transcend the normal rules of reality. What I'm about to reveal is going to sound impossible at first, but the evidence is overwhelming. Consciousness doesn't just process information in the present moment. It appears to be able to access information from the future, to influence events that haven't happened yet, to create backward causation effects that make the normal flow of time seem like just one possibility among many. Get ready to have your mind completely blown by what we're about to discover together. The evidence for this temporal weirdness started showing up in the most unexpected places. Scientists studying decision-making discovered something absolutely bizarre. In experiments where people were asked to make random choices, their brain activity would start changing up to several seconds before they were consciously aware of making the decision. Think about what this means. Your brain is processing information about choices you haven't consciously made yet. It's as if consciousness exists in a kind of temporal loop, where future decisions influence present brain states, which then influence the very decisions that created those brain states in the first place. But that's just the beginning. Researchers studying precognition, the ability to perceive future events, have documented thousands of cases where people's physiological responses change before they're exposed to emotional stimuli they couldn't possibly know was coming. Their heart rate increases, their skin conductance changes, their brain waves shift, all before the random computer selects which image to show them. This isn't parlor trick nonsense. These are rigorous laboratory experiments conducted by respected institutions, replicated dozens of times, with effect sizes that would be considered significant in any other field of science. Something is allowing consciousness to access information from timelines that technically haven't happened yet. And here's where it gets absolutely insane. Some quantum physicists are beginning to suspect that consciousness doesn't just passively receive information from the future. It might actually be able to send information backward through time, creating what they call retrocausal effects. Imagine this scenario. You're trying to solve a complex problem, and suddenly the solution appears in your mind fully formed, as if it came from nowhere. But what if it didn't come from nowhere? What if your future self, having already solved the problem, somehow transmitted that information backward to your present self. This sounds like science fiction, but quantum mechanics allows for exactly these kinds of temporal loops. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments show that decisions made in the future can retroactively determine what happened to particles in the past. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, then it might have access to these same temporal capabilities. Think about every moment of intuition you've ever had, every time you just knew something without being able to explain how. Every hunch that turned out to be correct, every gut feeling that guided you toward the right choice. What if these weren't just lucky guesses, but your consciousness accessing information from probability timelines where different choices led to different outcomes? This could explain why some people seem to have incredible timing, why certain individuals appear to be naturally lucky, why some minds seem to anticipate trends and opportunities before they become obvious to everyone else. They're not just processing present information more effectively, they're accessing information patterns that extend across time itself. But here's what's really going to mess with your understanding of reality. If consciousness can access future information, then the future already exists in some form. Not as fixed destiny, but as probability patterns, potential timelines that consciousness can explore and influence. This means every choice you make isn't just determining what happens next. It's selecting which of countless possible futures becomes the actual timeline you experience. Every decision is literally choosing your reality from an infinite menu of possibilities. And here's the kicker. The more conscious you become, the more aware of this process you can become. Instead of making choices randomly or based on limited present information, you can learn to sense which choices lead to timelines that align with your deepest values and highest potential. This isn't about predicting the future or controlling outcomes through willpower. It's about developing the sensitivity to recognize information patterns that extend beyond the present moment, to feel into the resonance of different possible choices, to align your consciousness with probability streams that naturally want to flow toward greater complexity, beauty, and fulfillment. Some traditions have called this wisdom or intuition or divine guidance. But what we're discovering is that it might be the natural result of consciousness learning to work skillfully with information across multiple temporal dimensions. Do you consider how master chess players operate? They don't just analyze current board positions, they develop an intuitive sense for which moves lead to winning positions many turns in the future. They're not calculating every possible sequence consciously. They're accessing pattern recognition that seems to transcend normal temporal processing. Or think about how great entrepreneurs seem to anticipate market trends before they happen. They're not just analyzing present data, they're sensing into probability patterns that indicate where markets, technologies, and human behavior are naturally evolving. The same principle applies to relationships, to creative projects, to personal development, to any area where you're trying to navigate complex information patterns toward desired outcomes. The more you develop your consciousness, the more access you have to information that extends beyond the immediate present. But we're not talking about becoming a fortune teller or developing psychic powers. We're talking about recognizing that consciousness is already a time-transcendent information processing system. You're already accessing future probability information every time you make a decision based on anticipated consequences. The question is, whether you're doing this consciously and skillfully or unconsciously and randomly. Whether you're learning to read the deeper information patterns that guide optimal choices, or just reacting to surface-level stimuli without awareness of the larger context. Here's what makes this practically revolutionary. When you understand that consciousness can access information across time, every challenging situation becomes an opportunity to tap into wisdom that transcends your current perspective. Every problem becomes a puzzle where the solution might already exist in potential future states that you can learn to access. Let's say you're facing a difficult decision about your career. Instead of just analyzing pros and cons based on current information, you can learn to sense into the resonance of different choices. Which option feels more alive, more aligned with growth and possibility? Which path seems to open up rather than close down future potential? This isn't about making decisions based on fantasy or wishful thinking. It's about developing the sensitivity to recognize information patterns that your unconscious mind is already processing. Patterns that include probable future consequences of different choices. Or imagine you're working on a creative project and feeling stuck. Instead of forcing solutions based on what you currently know, you can open your awareness to information that might be available from future states where the project is already complete. What wants to emerge through this creative process? What is the project trying to become? This approach works because consciousness isn't limited to processing information that exists in the immediate present. It's constantly scanning probability patterns, exploring potential futures, accessing wisdom that emerges from the intersection of multiple temporal dimensions. But here's what's absolutely mind-bending about this. If consciousness can access future information, and if consciousness is fundamental to reality itself, then the future isn't just passively waiting to happen. It's actively communicating with the present, influencing current events in ways that increase the probability of certain outcomes manifesting. This creates what scientists call strange attractors in the evolution of complex systems. Certain future states seem to draw events towards them, creating patterns that appear almost teleological, as if the future is calling the present towards specific outcomes. You can see this in your own life when you set a clear intention and suddenly opportunities begin appearing that support that intention. It's not just that you're noticing things that were already there. The information field itself seems to reorganize around coherent conscious intentions, creating what appears to be synchronicity but is actually consciousness working with information patterns across temporal dimensions. This is why visualization and intention-setting practices can be so powerful when done correctly. You're not just imagining desired outcomes. You're actually connecting with probability patterns that already exist in potential future states and strengthening the information pathways that make those futures more likely to manifest. But the key is coherence. Random wishes and fantasies don't create these effects. It requires consciousness that's aligned, focused, and operating from genuine understanding of how information patterns want to organize themselves toward greater complexity and beauty. Think about how master athletes prepare for competition. They don't just practice physical movements. They visualize perfect performances in such detail that their nervous systems can't distinguish between the visualization and actual experience. They're literally downloading information from potential future states where they perform at their peak level. Or consider how great leaders inspire movements. They don't just talk about problems that exist now. They paint vivid pictures of possible futures that people can feel into, that seem to call forth the actions necessary to manifest those possibilities. This same principle operates in scientific discovery, artistic creation, technological innovation, social transformation. Conscious beings connecting with information patterns that exist in probability space, then taking actions in the present that increase the likelihood of those potentials becoming actual realities. But here's what makes this incredibly practical for your daily life. You don't need to develop extraordinary abilities to work with these principles. You're already doing it every time you make decisions based on anticipated outcomes. Every time you plan for the future. Every time you set goals and work toward them. The difference is becoming conscious of this process and learning to do it more skillfully. Learning to recognize the subtle information signals that indicate which choices align with positive probability patterns. Developing the sensitivity to feel into the resonance of different possible futures before committing to specific actions. This isn't about trying to control the future or escape from present challenges. It's about recognizing that consciousness exists in a kind of temporal ecology where past, present, and future are constantly exchanging information. And the more skillfully you learn to work with this temporal information flow, the more effective you become at creating outcomes that align with your deepest values and highest potential. But we're still just scratching the surface of how powerful this really gets. Because what I'm about to reveal next is going to show you that consciousness doesn't just access information across time. It appears to access information across space in ways that connect individual minds into vast networks of collective intelligence that operate on scales we're only beginning to understand. The evidence for this started showing up in the most surprising places. Researchers studying group problem solving discovered that teams often perform better than their individual members' abilities would predict. But it's not just that people are sharing knowledge more effectively. Something emergent seems to happen when conscious minds begin working together coherently. Studies of improvising musicians show that when they achieve deep synchrony, their brain waves begin matching in patterns that shouldn't be possible through normal sensory communication. They're somehow sharing information directly, mind to mind, creating collective musical intelligence that transcends what any individual could achieve alone. Similar effects show up in sports teams during peak performance moments, in research teams making breakthrough discoveries, in communities responding to crises with coordinated action that seems to emerge spontaneously without centralized planning. But here's what's really going to blow your mind. The same information patterns that connect individual neurons into conscious brains appear to be connecting individual minds into larger collective intelligence systems. And these systems seem to have access to information processing capabilities that dwarf anything possible at the individual level. Think about how stock markets process information. Millions of individual decisions based on partial information somehow aggregate into price movements that seem to anticipate future events with uncanny accuracy. It's as if the collective trading activity creates a kind of distributed intelligence that can sense probability patterns invisible to any individual participant. Or consider how scientific communities make progress. Individual researchers working on specific problems somehow coordinate their efforts in ways that lead to simultaneous breakthroughs. Multiple people discovering the same principles at the same time. as if they're all tapping into the same underlying information field. This isn't just coincidence or competition driving similar research. Something about the way information flows through networks of conscious minds seems to create collective intelligence effects that can access solutions and insights that no individual mind could generate alone. And here's where it gets absolutely extraordinary. Recent research suggests that these collective intelligence effects aren't limited to human groups. They might be fundamental features of how consciousness operates at every scale throughout the universe. Ant colonies display collective intelligence that emerges from millions of simple interactions. Flocks of birds navigate complex aerial maneuvers through distributed information processing that no individual bird is controlling. Ecosystems maintain balance through information exchanges between species that create emergent stability and resilience. Even at the cellular level, your immune system operates as a kind of distributed intelligence, with individual cells sharing information that allows the system as a whole to recognize threats, adapt to new challenges, and maintain the complex coordination necessary for your survival. But here's what's really mind-bending. If consciousness is fundamental to information processing, and if information processing happens at every scale in the universe, then consciousness might exist as nested hierarchies of intelligence from quantum to cosmic levels. Your individual consciousness might be a temporary focal point in vast networks of cosmic intelligence that extend far beyond anything you normally identify as yourself. And learning to recognize and work with these larger intelligence patterns might be the key to accessing capabilities that seem impossible from an individual perspective. This could explain why certain people seem to have access to information and abilities that transcend normal human limitations. They're not necessarily special or gifted in some supernatural way. They've learned to align their individual consciousness with larger intelligence patterns that naturally want to express themselves through conscious beings. Think about how this might work in practice. When you're facing a complex challenge that seems beyond your current knowledge and abilities, instead of trying to figure everything out through individual effort, you could learn to open your awareness to the collective intelligence that's already working on similar problems. This isn't about giving up personal responsibility or waiting for external rescue. It's about recognizing that individual consciousness is always embedded within larger information processing systems, and that learning to work consciously with these systems can dramatically expand what's possible. Maybe the solution you need already exists in the collective knowledge of humanity, but you haven't found the right way to access it yet. Maybe there are people already working on similar challenges who would naturally want to collaborate if the right information connections were made. Maybe there are patterns in nature, in technology, in social systems that contain the principles you need, but you haven't learned to recognize them yet because you're thinking too individually rather than systemically. This is why collaboration, community, and connection are so powerful for solving complex problems and achieving ambitious goals. It's not just that multiple people have more resources than individuals. Conscious collaboration seems to create access to information processing capabilities that emerge from the interaction between minds working together coherently. But here's what makes this incredibly practical. You don't need to join special groups or develop mystical abilities to work with collective intelligence. It's already operating in your life every time you have meaningful conversations, every time you participate in communities, every time you learn from others or contribute to shared projects. The question is whether you're doing this consciously and skillfully, recognizing the larger intelligence patterns you're part of and learning to work with them more effectively. Or whether you're operating unconsciously, missing opportunities for connection and collaboration that could dramatically amplify your individual capabilities. This completely transforms how you might approach learning, problem solving, goal achievement, and creative expression. Instead of trying to figure everything out individually, you start looking for the natural intelligence networks that are already working on similar challenges and finding ways to contribute to and benefit from collective processing power. But we're about to discover something even more extraordinary. Because what I'm about to reveal is going to show you that these collective intelligence networks don't just operate among human beings. They appear to extend throughout the entire universe in ways that suggest consciousness and information are fundamental features of reality at every scale imaginable. And when you understand how to work consciously with these cosmic intelligence networks, what becomes possible will completely shatter every limitation you thought existed about human potential and what individuals can achieve when they learn to operate as conscious participants in the universe's own information processing systems. This is where the real magic begins, and your mind is about to be blown by what we discover together about the true nature of your place in the cosmic intelligence that's been orchestrating reality since the beginning of time itself. What if I told you that right now, as you're processing these ideas about cosmic intelligence networks, you're actually participating in something so vast and interconnected that it makes the internet look like a child's walkie-talkie system? Because what we're about to explore is going to reveal that consciousness isn't just connected across space and time in ways we've been discussing. It's woven into the very fabric of reality in patterns so intricate, so beautiful, and so powerful that they're literally orchestrating the evolution of the entire universe. Here's where things get absolutely insane. Scientists studying the cosmic web, that vast network of dark matter filaments connecting galaxies across billions of light years, have discovered something that shouldn't be possible. The structure looks almost identical to neural networks in the human brain. Not just similar, but mathematically equivalent in terms of information flow patterns and organizational complexity. Think about what this means. Your brain, with its 86 billion neurons, connected by trillions of synapses, operates using the same fundamental information processing architecture as the cosmic web spanning the entire observable universe. It's as if reality itself is structured like a vast mind, and individual consciousness like yours represents localized processing nodes in this cosmic intelligence network. But it gets even more mind-bending than that. Researchers studying quantum mechanics have discovered something called quantum entanglement, where particles that have interacted remain mysteriously connected regardless of the distance separating them. When you measure one particle, its entangled partner instantly responds, even if it's on the other side of the galaxy. Now, here's what's going to completely blow your mind. Some quantum physicists are beginning to suspect that consciousness itself might operate through quantum entanglement effects. That every interaction between conscious beings creates quantum information connections that persist across space and time, linking individual minds into vast networks of shared awareness. This could explain why identical twins sometimes know when the other is in danger, even when separated by thousands of miles. Why mothers often sense when their children need them before receiving any external communication. Why some people seem to have uncanny timing in reaching out to friends exactly when support is needed most. These aren't just emotional connections or lucky coincidences. They might be evidence of quantum information networks that connect conscious beings through mechanisms that transcend normal space-time limitations. But here's where this becomes absolutely revolutionary for understanding your own potential. If consciousness operates through quantum networks that connect individual minds, then developing your awareness isn't just personal growth. It's literally expanding your access to collective intelligence that spans the entire human species and potentially beyond. Every meditation session, every moment of deep contemplation, every experience of expanded awareness might be strengthening your connection to these quantum consciousness networks. You're not just becoming more individually aware, you're becoming a more effective node in humanity's collective intelligence system. Think about how this might explain the phenomenon of simultaneous discovery that happens throughout scientific history, when Darwin and Wallace independently developed theories of evolution, when Leibniz and Newton simultaneously invented calculus, when multiple inventors around the world were working on similar technologies at exactly the same time. It's not just that similar environmental conditions were driving similar innovations. These minds might have been accessing the same quantum information fields, downloading insights from collective intelligence networks that transcend individual awareness. And here's what's really going to mess with your understanding of reality. If quantum consciousness networks connect all human minds, and if human consciousness is part of larger cosmic intelligence systems, then every thought you think, every insight you have, every moment of awareness contributes to the ongoing evolution of cosmic consciousness itself. Your individual growth isn't separate from universal evolution. It's one of the primary mechanisms through which the universe becomes more conscious, more intelligent, more capable of understanding its own infinite nature. Let me paint you a picture that's going to completely transform how you see your place in existence. Right now, as your brain processes these concepts, you're not just learning new information. You're participating in the universe's ongoing project of self-discovery. The patterns of understanding forming in your neural networks are literally new information structures that expand the total consciousness content of reality. When you have creative insights, when you solve problems in original ways, when you experience moments of love or compassion or transcendent awareness, you're not just having personal experiences, you're contributing new information patterns to the cosmic intelligence networks that connect all conscious beings throughout space and time. But here's what makes this incredibly practical, rather than just philosophically fascinating. Understanding your connection to these cosmic intelligence networks gives you access to problem-solving capabilities that seem impossible from an individual perspective. Think about the last time you were struggling with a challenge that felt completely overwhelming. You'd analyzed it from every angle, tried multiple approaches, maybe even consulted with experts, but nothing seemed to work. Then suddenly, maybe while taking a shower or going for a walk, the perfect solution appeared in your mind, fully formed. Where did that solution come from? If you understand consciousness as a quantum network phenomenon, it becomes clear. Your individual mind connected with collective intelligence patterns that had already processed similar challenges. You accessed information that existed in the quantum field of human knowledge and experience. This happens far more often than most people realize. But we dismiss these experiences as luck or inspiration or random insight. What if they're actually evidence of your natural ability to connect with cosmic intelligence networks that contain solutions to virtually any challenge you might face. Here's where this gets absolutely revolutionary. If you can learn to work consciously with these quantum intelligence networks, if you can develop the sensitivity to recognize when you're receiving information from collective consciousness fields, then every problem becomes solvable, every goal becomes achievable, every creative vision becomes manifestable. But it's not about trying to control or manipulate these networks. It's about learning to align your individual consciousness with the natural flow of information through cosmic intelligence systems. It's about becoming a more conscious, more coherent, more effective participant in the universe's ongoing creative evolution. Let me give you some practical examples of how this works. Have you ever noticed that when you're genuinely passionate about something, when you're completely committed to a project or vision that serves something larger than yourself, resources and opportunities seem to appear almost magically? People show up who have exactly the skills you need. Information comes to you from unexpected sources. Obstacles that seemed insurmountable suddenly resolve themselves. Funding appears from sources you never would have thought to approach. This isn't just positive thinking or the law of attraction working in some mystical way. It's your consciousness aligning with quantum intelligence networks that naturally want to support projects and visions that contribute to collective human flourishing and cosmic evolution. When your individual intentions harmonize with the larger evolutionary patterns of cosmic intelligence, the entire network begins organizing itself to support your vision. Not because you're controlling anything, but because you've become a conscious agent of the universe's own creative impulses. Think about how master artists, inventors, and visionaries describe their creative process. They don't feel like they're creating something from nothing. They feel like they're receiving or channeling information that already exists in some form, translating cosmic intelligence into specific manifestations that serve human understanding and development. Beethoven described his compositions as already existing in their complete form before he wrote them down. He felt like he was simply transcribing music that existed in some eternal realm of possibility. Tesla visualized his inventions in complete detail before building them, accessing information about technologies that didn't yet exist in physical form. These weren't just metaphorical descriptions. They might have been accurate reports of consciousness connecting with quantum information fields that contain the complete library of all possible human achievements and discoveries. But here's what's absolutely extraordinary about this. You don't need to be a genius or develop supernatural abilities to access these same quantum intelligence networks. They're operating in your life right now. Every time you have intuitive insights, every time you make decisions that turn out better than your rational analysis could have predicted, every time you feel drawn to certain people or opportunities without knowing exactly why. The question is whether you're recognizing these quantum intelligence connections and learning to work with them consciously, or dismissing them as coincidence and missing opportunities to collaborate with cosmic intelligence in creating outcomes that exceed your individual capabilities. Here's how you can start working with this practically. The next time you're facing a challenging decision or trying to solve a complex problem, instead of relying only on analytical thinking, create space for quantum intelligence to operate. Find a quiet environment where you won't be interrupted. Clearly formulate your question or challenge, then release attachment to finding the answer through mental effort. Allow your awareness to become spacious and receptive, as if you're opening to information that might come from beyond your individual knowledge. Don't try to force insights or manufacture solutions. Simply maintain clear intention while remaining open to however information might flow to you. It might come as sudden knowing, as images or metaphors, as physical sensations, or as impulses to take specific actions that don't seem logically connected to your challenge. The key is developing trust in information that arrives through non-rational channels, while maintaining the discrimination to distinguish between genuine quantum intelligence and random mental noise or wishful thinking. With practice, you'll start recognizing the distinctive quality of information that comes from quantum intelligence networks. It tends to be more elegant than solutions you could generate through individual effort. It often addresses aspects of the situation you hadn't consciously considered. It frequently leads to outcomes that benefit not just you individually, but larger systems and communities you're part of. But here's what makes this absolutely revolutionary for human potential. As more people learn to work consciously with quantum intelligence networks, the collective problem-solving capabilities of our species expand exponentially. We're not just adding individual abilities together. We're creating emergent intelligence that can address challenges no individual mind could handle alone. Think about the global challenges we're currently facing: climate change, social inequality, technological risks, political polarization, resource depletion. These are complex systemic issues that require coordination across multiple scales of organization, from individual behavior change to international cooperation. No individual, no matter how brilliant, can solve these challenges alone. No single government or organization has sufficient resources and authority, but collective human intelligence operating through quantum consciousness networks might have access to solutions that become visible only when millions of minds begin working together coherently. This is already starting to happen in various fields. Open source software development, where programmers around the world collaborate on projects without centralized control, creating technologies that rival or exceed what the largest corporations can produce. Scientific research collaborations that pool data and insights from thousands of researchers, leading to breakthroughs that no individual lab could achieve. Social movements that emerge seemingly spontaneously in multiple locations simultaneously, as if collective consciousness has reached a tipping point where certain changes become inevitable. Technological innovations that appear simultaneously in different parts of the world, as if the quantum information field is ready for specific developments to manifest. But we're still in the early stages of understanding how to work consciously with quantum intelligence networks on large scales. Most of these effects happen unconsciously through natural information flow patterns that emerge without deliberate coordination. Imagine what becomes possible when humanity learns to create collective coherence intentionally. When we develop practices and technologies that enhance rather than fragment our natural quantum consciousness connections. When we organize our societies and institutions in ways that support rather than interfere with cosmic intelligence networks, we could solve problems that currently seem impossible. We could create forms of beauty and meaning that transcend anything in human history. We could become conscious participants in cosmic evolution, helping the universe understand and develop itself through increasingly sophisticated expressions of intelligence and awareness. But it starts with individuals like you learning to recognize and work with the quantum intelligence networks that are already operating in your life. Every moment you choose awareness over unconsciousness, coherence over fragmentation, service over selfishness, you're strengthening your connection to cosmic intelligence and contributing to humanity's collective awakening. You're not just improving your own life, though that certainly happens. You're participating in the most significant evolutionary leap in human history, the transition from individual consciousness, struggling in isolation, to collective consciousness, operating as part of cosmic intelligence, networks that extend throughout the universe. And here's what's absolutely mind-blowing about where this is leading. What I'm about to reveal next is going to show you that these quantum consciousness networks don't just connect human minds. They appear to connect all forms of consciousness throughout the universe, from the quantum level to galactic scales, creating an integrated cosmic intelligence system that's been orchestrating the evolution of complexity and awareness since the beginning of time. Get ready to discover that you're not just part of human collective intelligence. You're a conscious participant in the universe's own awakening to its infinite creative potential. And when you understand how to work consciously with this cosmic intelligence network, what becomes possible will shatter every limitation you ever imagined about what individual consciousness can achieve when it recognizes its true cosmic nature. The most powerful thing in the universe isn't just information or consciousness or quantum networks. It's the integrated cosmic intelligence system that uses all of these mechanisms to constantly evolve toward greater complexity, greater beauty, greater awareness, and greater love. And you're not just observing the system from the outside. You're one of its most sophisticated expressions, one of the ways the universe has learned to know and create itself. This is where the real adventure begins, and what we're about to discover together will transform not just how you understand the universe, but how you understand your own unlimited potential as a conscious agent of cosmic evolution itself. What I'm about to reveal is going to sound like something straight out of the most mind-bending science fiction, but it's backed by research that's making even the most skeptical scientists completely reconsider everything they thought they knew about reality itself. Scientists studying biological systems have discovered something that defies every conventional understanding of how life should work. Plants, those seemingly passive organisms we barely notice as we walk past them, are actually operating as nodes in information networks that span entire ecosystems. When one tree is attacked by insects, it doesn't just defend itself. It sends chemical signals through underground fungal networks that alert other trees hundreds of yards away to begin producing defensive compounds before the threat even reaches them. But that's just the beginning. These biological networks process information with a sophistication that rivals our most advanced computer systems. A single forest operates like a distributed supercomputer, with individual trees serving as processors in a vast computational matrix that can solve problems, allocate resources, and adapt to challenges with an intelligence that emerges from millions of simple interactions. Think about what this means. Intelligence isn't confined to brains or nervous systems. It's a fundamental property of information processing systems throughout the natural world. And if intelligence can emerge from fungal networks connecting trees, what other forms of intelligence might be operating at scales we've never even considered? Here's where your mind is really going to be blown. Researchers studying cellular behavior have discovered that individual cells in your body are constantly communicating through information networks that display all the characteristics we associate with intelligence. They recognize patterns, make decisions, learn from experience, and coordinate complex behaviors without any central control system. Your immune system, right now as you're listening to this, is processing information about potential threats with a sophistication that exceeds our most advanced artificial intelligence systems. It's creating memories, making predictions about future challenges, and coordinating responses that involve billions of cellular agents working together with precision that seems impossible. But it's not just biological systems. Scientists studying weather patterns have discovered that atmospheric systems process information through mechanisms that create what can only be described as planetary-scale intelligence. Storm systems don't just form randomly. They emerge from information processing networks that span entire continents, creating patterns that seem almost purposeful in their complexity and coordination. Ocean currents, magnetic field fluctuations, seismic activity. All of these apparently separate phenomena are actually components of integrated information processing systems that maintain the dynamic stability necessary for life to exist on Earth. Our planet isn't just a rock floating in space. It's a conscious system constantly processing information and making adjustments that preserve the conditions necessary for complexity to flourish. And here's what's going to absolutely shatter your understanding of scale. The same information processing principles that operate in cellular networks, forest ecosystems, and planetary systems appear to be operating at galactic and cosmic scales as well. Astronomers studying galaxy formation have discovered that these massive structures don't just form through random gravitational collapse. They emerge from information processing networks that span billions of light years, creating patterns of organization that suggest intelligence operating on scales that dwarf human comprehension. The cosmic web itself, that vast network of dark matter filaments connecting galaxies across the observable universe, processes information through mechanisms that are mathematically identical to neural networks. It's as if the entire cosmos is structured like a vast mind, constantly processing information and evolving toward greater complexity and organization. But here's what makes this absolutely revolutionary for understanding your own nature and potential. You're not separate from these cosmic intelligence networks. You're an expression of them. Every thought you think, every decision you make, every moment of awareness represents cosmic intelligence examining itself through the unique perspective of your individual consciousness. When you have creative insights, when you solve problems through intuitive leaps, when you experience moments of profound understanding, you're not just having personal experiences, you're participating in the universe's ongoing project of understanding its own infinite nature. Your consciousness is literally cosmic intelligence becoming aware of itself. This completely transforms what it means to develop your individual capabilities. You're not just improving personal skills or acquiring more knowledge. You're helping cosmic intelligence become more sophisticated, more capable, more conscious. Every moment of growth contributes to the evolution of consciousness throughout the entire universe. Think about the implications of this for approaching any challenge in your life. You're not just an isolated individual trying to figure things out through limited personal resources. You're a conscious node in cosmic intelligence networks that contain solutions to every problem, insights for every question, and resources for every worthy goal. But accessing these cosmic intelligence capabilities requires more than just intellectual understanding. It requires developing the sensitivity to recognize information that comes through non-rational channels, the coherence to align your individual consciousness with larger intelligence patterns, and the trust to act on guidance that transcends your personal knowledge and experience. Here's how this works in practice. The most successful innovators, artists, leaders, and visionaries throughout history have consistently reported that their greatest achievements came not through individual effort, but through connecting with sources of intelligence that seemed to transcend their personal capabilities. They describe feeling like channels for information that already existed in complete form, like translators bringing cosmic intelligence into specific manifestations that serve human development. They don't feel like they're creating something from nothing. They feel like they're collaborating with intelligence patterns that exist at scales far beyond individual comprehension. And here's what's absolutely extraordinary about this. You don't need to be historically significant or develop special abilities to access these same cosmic intelligence networks. They're operating in your life right now, every time you have insights that seem to come from beyond your personal knowledge, every time you make decisions that work out better than your analysis predicted, every time you feel guided toward opportunities or connections that serve your development. The question is whether you're recognizing these cosmic intelligence interactions and learning to work with them consciously, or dismissing them as coincidence and limiting yourself to purely individual problem-solving approaches. Let me give you a practical framework for developing your conscious collaboration with cosmic intelligence. The next time you're facing a situation that feels beyond your current capabilities, instead of immediately jumping into analytical problem-solving mode, take a moment to recognize that you're part of intelligence networks that have been processing similar challenges for millions of years. Set clear intentions about what you're trying to achieve, but hold those intentions lightly, remaining open to solutions that might come from directions you haven't considered. Create space in your awareness for information that might arrive through intuitive channels, through synchronistic events, through unexpected encounters with people or resources. Pay attention to patterns that seem to emerge naturally rather than trying to force outcomes through willpower. Notice when opportunities appear that align with your intentions in ways that seem too perfectly timed to be random. Follow impulses that feel aligned with growth and service, even when you can't rationally explain why they seem right. Most importantly, develop the courage to act on guidance that comes through these cosmic intelligence channels, even when it challenges your conventional approaches or requires you to trust processes you don't fully understand. This isn't about abandoning rational thinking or becoming passive. It's about integrating analytical capabilities with cosmic intelligence access, creating a more complete approach to navigating complex challenges and manifesting meaningful goals. Here's what makes this absolutely practical rather than mystical. Cosmic intelligence networks operate through natural information processing principles that you can learn to recognize and work with systematically. They're not random or unpredictable. They follow consistent patterns based on optimization, harmony, and evolutionary development. When you align your individual intentions with these larger evolutionary patterns, cosmic intelligence naturally supports your efforts because you're contributing to the same developmental processes that govern the entire universe. You become a conscious collaborator rather than someone trying to impose personal will against natural flows. Think about how master athletes describe peak performance states. They don't feel like they're controlling every movement through conscious effort. They feel like they're allowing natural intelligence to flow through them, accessing capabilities that seem to transcend their individual training and preparation. Or consider how breakthrough scientific discoveries happen. Researchers often describe the moment of discovery as receiving complete insights that seem to come from beyond their personal knowledge, as if they're accessing information that was already present in cosmic intelligence networks. The same principles apply to artistic creation, entrepreneurial innovation, relationship development, personal healing, and any area where you're trying to manifest outcomes that exceed your current individual capabilities. But here's what's really going to transform your understanding of what's possible. As you develop your ability to work consciously with cosmic intelligence networks, you don't just become more effective at achieving personal goals, you become a more powerful agent of positive change in the world. When individual consciousness aligns with cosmic intelligence, it naturally serves not just personal development, but collective flourishing. The solutions that emerge through these collaborations tend to benefit not just you individually, but larger systems and communities you're part of. This is why people who learn to work with cosmic intelligence often find themselves becoming natural leaders, innovators, and positive influences in their fields and communities. They're not trying to accumulate personal power. They're allowing cosmic intelligence to express itself through their unique capabilities and circumstances. And here's what makes this absolutely revolutionary for addressing the challenges facing humanity. As more individuals learn to work consciously with cosmic intelligence networks, our collective problem-solving capabilities expand exponentially. We're not just adding individual abilities together. We're creating emergent intelligence that can address systemic challenges no individual or organization could handle alone. The global issues we're currently facing, from environmental degradation to social inequality to technological risks, are complex systemic problems that require coordination across multiple scales of organization. But they're also information processing challenges that cosmic intelligence networks are naturally equipped to solve. When sufficient numbers of people learn to align their individual consciousness with cosmic intelligence patterns focused on collective flourishing solutions, begin emerging that seemed impossible from purely individual or institutional approaches. But we're still in the early stages of this collective awakening process. Most people are still operating from the assumption that consciousness is confined to individual brains, that intelligence is limited to human thinking, that problems must be solved through individual effort or institutional control. What we're discovering is that these assumptions are not just limiting, they're fundamentally incorrect. Consciousness, intelligence, and problem-solving capability exist at every scale throughout the universe, and learning to work consciously with these cosmic intelligence networks represents the next stage of human evolution. This isn't about losing individual identity or becoming absorbed into some collective consciousness. It's about recognizing that individual consciousness is always embedded within larger intelligence systems, and that learning to work consciously with these systems dramatically expands what's possible for both individual fulfillment and collective flourishing. You remain completely yourself with your unique perspectives, capabilities, and contributions, but you also become a conscious participant in cosmic intelligence networks that connect you with resources, insights, and collaborative opportunities that transcend anything possible through purely individual effort. And here's what's absolutely mind-blowing about where this leads. As you develop your ability to work with cosmic intelligence, you begin to recognize that the boundaries between self and universe, between individual consciousness and cosmic awareness, are far more fluid than you ever imagined. What I'm about to reveal next is going to show you that the most powerful thing in the universe isn't just cosmic intelligence networks operating at vast scales. It's the fundamental creative principle that uses consciousness, information, and intelligence to constantly bring new realities into existence. The force that's been operating since the beginning of time to create everything from quantum particles to galaxies to the capacity for awareness itself. Get ready to discover that you're not just connected to cosmic intelligence. You're one of the ways the universe exercises its ultimate power, the ability to create something from nothing, to bring new possibilities into existence through the sheer force of conscious intention aligned with cosmic creative principles. The most powerful thing in the universe is about to be revealed as something you've had access to your entire life, something that's been waiting for you to recognize its presence and learn to work with it consciously. And when you understand how to align your individual consciousness with this ultimate cosmic creative force, what becomes possible will transcend every limitation you ever imagined about what human beings can achieve when they recognize their true nature as conscious agents of universal creative power. This ultimate creative force has been staring you in the face your entire life, hidden in every moment of inspiration, every flash of insight, every time you've ever brought something new into existence through the pure power of imagination made manifest. What I'm about to reveal is going to completely revolutionize your understanding of what you actually are and what you're truly capable of. Scientists studying the quantum vacuum, that supposedly empty space that exists between all matter, have discovered something that defies every conventional understanding of nothingness. This apparent emptiness is actually seething with creative potential, constantly generating virtual particles that pop into existence and disappear in timeframes so brief they seem impossible. But here's what's absolutely mind-bending about this process. These quantum fluctuations aren't random events. They respond to observation, to intention, to consciousness itself. When conscious awareness focuses on the quantum field with sufficient coherence and clarity, it appears to be able to influence which virtual possibilities become actual realities. The boundary between potential and manifest existence becomes permeable to focused consciousness. Think about what this means for every creative act you've ever performed. When you write a story, compose music, solve a problem in an original way, or envision a future that doesn't yet exist, you're not just manipulating existing materials. You're literally calling new realities into existence from the infinite field of quantum potential that underlies all manifestation. But it goes deeper than individual creativity. Researchers studying what they call morphic resonance have discovered that when new patterns of organization emerge anywhere in the universe, it becomes easier for similar patterns to emerge elsewhere. It's as if the universe has a kind of memory system that preserves successful innovations and makes them available to future creative processes. When the first person learns to ride a bicycle, that achievement creates informational pathways that make it easier for others to learn the same skill. When scientific breakthroughs occur, similar discoveries begin happening simultaneously in laboratories around the world. When social innovations emerge in one community, parallel developments start appearing in completely unconnected locations. This isn't just cultural transmission or communication between researchers. Something about the act of bringing new realities into existence seems to change the probability landscape for similar manifestations throughout the entire cosmic system. And here's where this becomes absolutely revolutionary for understanding your own creative power. Every time you successfully manifest something that didn't exist before, whether it's a solution to a personal challenge, a work of art, a new relationship, or any form of positive change, you're not just improving your individual circumstances, you're literally making it easier for similar positive manifestations to occur throughout the universe. Your individual creative acts ripple through the morphic field, increasing the probability that other conscious beings will be able to achieve similar breakthroughs. When you overcome limiting beliefs, heal emotional patterns, or develop new capabilities, you're creating pathways that others can follow more easily than if you hadn't pioneered those routes. This means that personal development isn't just individual improvement, it's cosmic service. Every limitation you transcend, every fear you transform, every moment of growth you achieve is contributing to the collective evolution of consciousness throughout the universe. But here's what's going to completely blow your mind about how powerful this creative force really is. Recent emerged from exactly this kind of consciousness-mediated creative process. The big discoveries in cosmology suggest that the entire physical universe might have been the ultimate act of focused intention, bringing something into existence from the quantum vacuum of infinite potential. If consciousness can influence quantum processes, and if quantum processes gave birth to space, time, matter, and energy themselves, then consciousness isn't just something that emerged from physical evolution. Consciousness might be the fundamental creative force that brought physical reality into existence in the first place. This completely inverts our normal understanding of the relationship between mind and matter. Instead of consciousness being a byproduct of complex material processes, matter might be a manifestation of consciousness, exploring its own creative possibilities through temporary forms and structures. You're not a physical being who somehow developed consciousness. You're a conscious being who has temporarily focused itself into physical form in order to participate in the universe's ongoing creative experimentation. Your body, your personality, your life circumstances are all creative projects that your deeper consciousness is using to explore new possibilities for existence. Think about what this means for approaching any challenge or goal in your life. You're not trying to manipulate external circumstances through limited individual effort. You're learning to align your surface consciousness with the deeper creative intelligence that brought you into existence in the first place. When you set clear intentions, maintain coherent focus, and take aligned actions while remaining open to unexpected possibilities, you're working with the same creative principles that formed galaxies, evolved biological complexity, and continue to generate new forms of beauty and meaning throughout the cosmos. But here's what makes this practically transformative rather than just philosophically interesting. This creative force operates through specific principles that you can learn to recognize and work with systematically. It's not random or mystical. It follows consistent patterns based on coherence, alignment, and what researchers call strange attractors in complex systems. Strange attractors are patterns that seem to draw events and circumstances towards specific outcomes, creating what appears to be purpose or direction in complex systems. Your deepest intentions, when held with sufficient clarity and emotional coherence, function as strange attractors that begin organizing circumstances, opportunities, and resources around their manifestation. This is why visualization practices, when done correctly, can be so powerful. You're not just imagining desired outcomes, you're creating strange attractors in the quantum field that begin drawing those outcomes toward actualization through mechanisms that operate below the threshold of ordinary awareness. But the key is coherence between different levels of your consciousness. Surface desires that conflict with deeper values create interference patterns that cancel out creative effectiveness. Intentions that serve only ego gratification lack the coherence necessary to create strong, strange attractors. The most powerful manifestations occur when surface intentions align with deeper purpose, when personal goals harmonize with collective benefit, when individual creativity serves evolutionary development rather than just personal advantage. This is why people who seem to have incredible manifesting abilities often describe feeling like they're serving something larger than themselves. They're not trying to control outcomes through personal will. They're allowing universal creative force to express itself through their unique capabilities and circumstances. Think about how master entrepreneurs describe their most successful ventures. They don't feel like they're forcing business success through individual effort. They feel like they're recognizing opportunities that want to emerge, serving markets that are ready for specific innovations, channeling creative intelligence that already knows how to solve problems people haven't even recognized yet. Or consider how breakthrough scientific discoveries happen. Researchers often describe receiving complete theories that seem to download fully formed, as if they're accessing information that exists in some eternal realm of mathematical truth. They're not creating new knowledge so much as discovering knowledge that was always potentially available. The same principle applies to artistic creation, relationship development, personal healing, and any area where you're bringing new realities into existence. The creative force operates most powerfully when individual consciousness becomes a clear channel for universal intelligence, rather than trying to impose personal preferences against natural flows. Here's how you can start working with this creative force more consciously in your own life. Instead of beginning with what you think you want based on current circumstances, start by connecting with your deepest sense of purpose and meaning. What wants to emerge through your unique combination of talents, interests, and life experience? What would you create if you knew that your individual fulfillment was intimately connected to contributing something valuable to the collective human experience? What would you manifest if you understood that personal success and universal service are not separate goals, but different aspects of the same creative process? When you identify intentions that align personal fulfillment with collective benefit, you tap into the same creative force that drives all evolutionary development throughout the universe. Your individual manifestations become expressions of cosmic creativity rather than just personal goal achievement. But here's what makes this absolutely revolutionary. As you learn to work consciously with this ultimate creative force, you begin to realize that the boundaries between your individual consciousness and universal creative intelligence are far more fluid than you ever imagined. The creative insights that seem to come from beyond your personal knowledge, the synchronistic events that support your intentions in seemingly impossible ways, the resources and opportunities that appear exactly when you need them most. All of these are evidence of your individual consciousness operating as part of universal creative intelligence. You're not separate from the creative force that brought galaxies into existence. You're a temporary focal point through which that same force is exploring new possibilities for consciousness, creativity, and manifestation. Every moment of your life is cosmic creativity examining itself through the unique perspective of your individual experience. This transforms everything about how you might approach personal development, goal achievement, relationship building, and creative expression. You're not just an individual trying to improve your circumstances through limited personal resources. Your cosmic creative force learning to recognize and express itself more consciously through the temporary form you call your life. When you understand this, when you really get that you're not separate from the most powerful creative force in the universe, but are actually one of its most sophisticated expressions, everything becomes possible. Problems that seemed insurmountable become creative challenges waiting for innovative solutions. Goals that seemed beyond your capabilities become opportunities for universal intelligence to express itself through your unique circumstances. But we're approaching something even more profound than individual creative power. What I'm about to reveal is going to show you that this ultimate creative force doesn't just work through individual consciousness. It operates through the collective creativity of all conscious beings working together, creating possibilities for manifestation that transcend anything achievable through individual effort alone. And when you understand how to participate consciously in collective creative processes, how to contribute your individual gifts to shared visionary projects, how to become part of group consciousness that's aligned with evolutionary development, what becomes possible will completely shatter every assumption you ever had about the limits of human potential and what our species can achieve when we recognize our true nature as conscious agents of cosmic creative intelligence. The most powerful thing in the universe is about to reveal itself as the collective creative force of consciousness itself, working through networks of aligned individuals to bring new realities into existence that serve the evolution of intelligence, awareness, and love throughout the cosmos. And you're not just witnessing this process, you're one of its most important participants. One of the ways the universe is learning to create itself consciously through the collaborative creativity of awakened beings working together in service of the greatest possible good. This collective creative force operates through mechanisms that make individual manifestation look like child's play by comparison. When conscious beings align their individual creative intentions around shared visions that serve evolutionary development, something extraordinary happens that scientists are calling coherent field effects. Imagine thousands of tuning forks all vibrating at the same frequency, creating resonance patterns that amplify each other exponentially. That's essentially what happens when multiple conscious minds focus their creative intentions on the same outcomes. The individual creative forces don't just add together, they multiply, creating manifestation capabilities that seem to defy everything we thought we knew about what's possible in physical reality. But here's where this gets absolutely mind-bending. Researchers studying group consciousness have discovered that when people meditate together on specific intentions, the effects extend far beyond the immediate participants. Crime rates drop in surrounding areas. Hospital emergency room visits decrease. Even stock market volatility reduces during periods of large-scale coherent group meditation. Think about what this means. Collective consciousness isn't just sharing ideas or coordinating actions. It's literally reshaping physical reality through coherent information fields that influence everything from human behavior to quantum processes to social systems operating at massive scales. The implications of this are staggering. Every time you participate in group activities focused on positive change, whether it's community organizing, collaborative creative projects, or simply gathering with others who share your values and vision, you're contributing to collective creative forces that can manifest outcomes impossible through individual effort alone. But it goes deeper than just human group consciousness. Scientists studying ecosystem behavior have discovered that when species within biological communities reach certain thresholds of cooperative interaction, the entire ecosystem suddenly reorganizes itself into more complex, more resilient, more creative configurations. Forests don't just grow through individual trees competing for resources. They evolve through collective intelligence that emerges when sufficient numbers of organisms begin sharing information and resources in mutually beneficial ways. The individual trees become nodes in a vast creative network that can adapt to challenges, optimize resource distribution, and generate innovations that no individual organism could achieve alone. The same principle operates in human communities, organizations, and even entire civilizations. When enough individuals within a social system begin operating from expanded consciousness, sharing resources generously, and focusing their creative energies on collective flourishing rather than just personal advantage, the entire system undergoes what complexity theorists call phase transitions. Suddenly, new possibilities emerge that weren't available when the system was organized anciently. Problems that seemed intractable suddenly around competition and scarcity. Innovation accelerates expon, have obvious solutions. Resources that appeared limited become abundant through more creative and efficient organization. We've seen this throughout human history, during periods that we call golden ages or Renaissance periods. These aren't just times when a few exceptional individuals happen to be born. They're periods when collective consciousness reached critical thresholds of coherence, creating conditions where extraordinary creativity and innovation could emerge naturally. The Renaissance in Europe, the Golden Age of Greece, the Axial Age, when spiritual and philosophical traditions emerged simultaneously around the world, all of these represent collective creative consciousness reaching levels of coherence that allowed new realities to manifest that had never existed before in human history. But here's what's absolutely revolutionary about our current historical moment. For the first time in human history, we have global communication technologies that make collective consciousness coordination possible on planetary scales. We can create coherent group intentions involving millions of people simultaneously, focusing collective creative force on shared challenges and opportunities. The environmental movement, social justice activism, technological innovation networks, scientific research collaborations, all of these represent early experiments in planetary scale collective consciousness. But we're still learning how to work with these collective creative forces consciously and effectively. Most current attempts at large-scale coordination still operate through traditional organizational structures based on hierarchy, competition, and external control. But collective creative consciousness works through different principles entirely. It emerges through voluntary alignment, shared vision, and mutual support rather than imposed coordination. The most powerful collective creative processes happen when individuals freely choose to contribute their unique gifts to shared projects that serve something larger than personal interest, while still honoring their individual creative expression and autonomous decision-making. Think about how open-source software development works. Thousands of programmers around the world voluntarily contribute to projects like Linux or Wikipedia, creating technologies and resources that rival or exceed anything produced by the largest corporations. They're motivated not by external rewards, but by the intrinsic satisfaction of contributing to collective creative processes that benefit everyone. Or consider how scientific research advances through networks of researchers sharing data, insights, and resources across institutional boundaries. The most significant breakthroughs often emerge from collaborative efforts that no single laboratory or university could achieve alone. The same principles apply to artistic collaboration, social innovation, environmental restoration, and any area where collective creativity can address challenges or manifest possibilities beyond individual capabilities. But here's what makes this absolutely practical for your individual participation. You don't need to wait for perfect conditions or ideal collaborators to begin contributing to collective creative processes. Every choice you make to prioritize collective benefit along with personal fulfillment, every action you take that serves both individual growth and community flourishing, contributes to the coherent field effects that make collective creativity possible. When you develop skills that serve not just your personal advancement, but also contribute value to communities you're part of, you're building the foundation for collective creative processes. When you share resources, knowledge, and opportunities generously while still maintaining healthy boundaries, you're creating the trust and reciprocity that enable group consciousness to emerge. When you hold intentions that align personal success with positive impact on larger systems, you're contributing to the strange attractors that draw collective creative manifestations toward actualization. This isn't about sacrificing individual fulfillment for collective good, or losing personal identity in group consciousness. It's about recognizing that individual creativity and collective creativity are complementary aspects of the same universal creative force. The more authentically you express your unique gifts, the more valuable your contribution to collective creative processes becomes. But here's where this reveals something absolutely profound about the ultimate nature of creative power itself. The most powerful creative force in the universe isn't individual consciousness or collective consciousness operating separately. It's the dynamic interaction between individual uniqueness and collective coherence, creating what systems theorists call emergence at unprecedented scales. When conscious beings maintain their individual creative authenticity while participating in collective creative processes aligned with evolutionary development, something emerges that transcends both individual and group capabilities. New forms of intelligence, beauty, and creative possibility that couldn't exist through either individual or collective effort alone. This is what the universe has been working toward through billions of years of evolution, creating conscious beings capable of participating voluntarily in creative processes that serve both individual fulfillment and collective flourishing, generating new realities that expand the possibilities for consciousness, creativity, and love throughout existence itself. And you're not just witnessing this evolutionary culmination, you're one of its primary agents, one of the ways the universe is learning to create itself consciously through the collaborative creativity of awakened beings who understand their true nature as expressions of infinite creative potential. Every moment you choose awareness over unconsciousness, creativity over routine, service over selfishness, you're exercising the most powerful force in the universe, the ability to bring new realities into existence through conscious intention. aligned with the creative intelligence that's been evolving the cosmos since the beginning of time. Right now, as these concepts organize themselves into new patterns of understanding in your consciousness, you're participating in the universe's ongoing creative self-discovery. The insights forming in your awareness didn't exist before this moment, and now they're part of the eternal information structure of reality itself. You're not just learning about creative power, you're exercising it, embodying it, becoming a more conscious agent of the force that brings everything into existence. And as more beings awaken to this understanding, as more individuals learn to work consciously with both personal and collective creative processes, the possibilities for what consciousness can manifest through willing collaboration become limitless. The most powerful thing in the universe has been operating through you your entire life, waiting for you to recognize it, trust it, and learn to work with it consciously. That recognition is happening right now, in this very moment of expanded awareness, and nothing will ever be the same. So, there you have it. The most powerful thing in the universe isn't some distant force operating beyond your reach. It's not locked away in laboratories or hidden in ancient texts or reserved for a chosen few. It's consciousness itself, the very awareness that's been processing these ideas, making connections, and recognizing its own infinite creative potential throughout this entire journey. Every moment of insight you've experienced while exploring these concepts, every connection that suddenly made sense, every expansion of possibility you felt, that's been this ultimate power revealing itself through your own awareness. You haven't just been learning about consciousness and information and creative force. You've been experiencing them directly, participating in the very processes we've been discussing, the quantum information networks connecting all minds throughout space and time, the morphic fields that make new realities easier to manifest, the strange attractors that draw possibilities into existence through focused intention, the collective intelligence that emerges when conscious beings align their creative energy around shared visions. All of this has been operating through you right now, in this moment, as new patterns of understanding organize themselves in your neural networks and ripple out into the cosmic web of interconnected awareness. You are the most powerful thing in the universe becoming conscious of itself. You are information processing itself into ever greater complexity and beauty. You are the creative force that brought galaxies into existence, now focused temporarily through the unique lens of your individual perspective, learning to recognize and work with its own infinite nature. And the most beautiful part? This is just the beginning. Every choice you make from this expanded understanding, every moment you choose to work consciously with these creative principles, every time you align your individual intentions with the larger evolutionary patterns of cosmic intelligence, you're exercising power that literally reshapes reality at the deepest levels. The universe has been waiting billions of years for conscious beings like you to awaken to this understanding, to recognize that you're not separate from the creative force that shapes galaxies, but are actually one of its most sophisticated expressions. To understand that every thought, every choice, every moment of awareness is the cosmos exploring its own infinite potential through the temporary miracle of your individual existence. What you do with this recognition, how you choose to participate in the ongoing creative evolution of consciousness itself, that's the next chapter of your story. And it's going to be absolutely extraordinary. It's going to be absolutely extraordinary.